The bush gets shaven. There's a new German superstar on the rise, and rostermania is in full swing. Let's dive into this week in Challengers. Challengers Cup 2 wrapped up this weekend, and with some upsets that were there. Most importantly, let's kick it off, Enigma. Telluride Bush, after winning Cup number 1, they come into Cup number 2, and unfortunately, the Razors don't look as sharp.
Certainly not. No. Falling from first to top 8 is a hell of a story. Yeah, double rounded on Sunday. Obviously, you get to Sunday, that's great, but it was a poor showing from there, quite frankly. And I think there's almost like two elements of this to kind of look at. Obviously, we can talk about the performances on the day or whatever, but there's two kind of things. One, spawned some incredible Jersey Jerry clips. So let's face it, losing your absolute mind at who Cruz is a wonderful moment. Just just screaming, "Who the hell's Cruz?" And then someone in the back like, "He's a nurse." Just like, it's just, first of all, it undersells exactly who Cruz is. That guy's a gentleman. But also then a deleted tweet from Spart that has made things very, very interesting out there. Of course, folks, you may have not seen it because it is deleted. It is on Reddit for you all to see. And all I got to say, Spart, look, you're my guy and everything, but that is a dumb thing to be coming out and saying that basically you didn't practice after winning Cup 1. Don't really know how to tell you there, but that's karma for you, baby.
I think that's kind of, the reality of the situation is that, like, sure, we all love challengers. We all love, the cups that are there. But we all know, like, there's kind of always been this air that, like, not that the cups don't matter, but they really are kind of like these little practice sessions up until the elite, right? Like, sure, you get a little bit of cash, you get those pro points that you're looking for. But it's kind of like winning Cup 1 to me, like, is great, cool, good job, but it doesn't necessarily mean like you're far and above, every other team that's in challengers. Like, it's just the beginning. It's just the stepping stone, right? So to kind of, like you said, see some of the things from that tweet of being like, oh yeah, we didn't really scrim is concerning. Let's put it that way.
Well, as well, I always think that like the earlier cups are almost a little bit of like, you can paper over your cracks, you can get by on pure talent. I think that the later cups have more weight to them. First of all, because they all largely play around the elites, and we'll get to that whole conversation later on, I'm sure. But it's the fact that you can learn the game, grow within the season, grow within the game. I think these are important traits for teams to see, especially when you're talking CDL and people potentially recruiting, rather than just coming out Cup 1, blowing the competition apart. Personally, I look at that and I go, well, yeah, you're a very stacked, experienced roster. We were kind of expecting that. So to then think that you're just going to walk in Cup 2, it defies belief, really. But to publicly admit it, to come out and basically, it's like putting on your timeline. It's basically telling your boss, hey, I did fuck all this week. So there's that.
Hey, and we even saw them like earlier in like the round of 128, like they get brought to a map 5, right? And it's just like, you get brought to a map 5, you make it to Sunday. I mean, round 1, you lose to Omit Brooklyn, who, spoiler alert, goes on to win the event. Okay, all right, you're not going to feel too bad about that. But then you go to the lower bracket. I think this will kind of go nice into our next topic. You then get 3-0'd by none other than the Optic Huntsman. Okay, let's talk about the Huntsman, because we mentioned last week after Cup 1, right? They don't manage to really make it. They go out in top 16. It's not really great. Okay, cool. They come in this week, and even though, yes, they drop to losers again, 3-0ing a team like Telluride Bush, I think shows that you've made improvements, which with a team like this is what we are really kind of laser focusing on. Are you improving cup over cup, week over week? Especially because we said going into last week, this is a team who, they only had 4 days of scrims. You got Renegade still trying to find the game out. Okay, now that you've had more scrims, I think Renegade is kind of finding himself, finding his role. They definitely looked a lot better this past weekend.
100%. So much of what you said basically is what I would echo. We're kind of looking at this team as one to grow through the season. And the fact that you managed to go from top 16 to top 8, essentially, well, what was it, top 6 they finish in the end, right? Because they obviously beat out Telluride Bush for top 8.
They lose to Falcons Academy Green.
That is insane growth. That is ridiculously impressive stuff. Also, Renegade didn't look out of place. I think in the Falcons Academy Green series, he had a rough one, but that's a harder competition than he had a tough time against last week. So it's getting better. It's getting there bit by bit. This is a player, again, who's trying to figure out the game at this level and figure out the team around him, because this has all kind of come together. Neum looked fantastic. Kips and Rispy certainly had their moments. So this team, for me, still have a hell of a long way to go. I think once Renegade gets to a point where he's really up there with like kind of his Halo form, this team is scary and disgusting. And I had the opportunity to tune in with a lot of the gameplay through the weekend. And they looked every part of the team that should be not only making it to our Sundays, but making it to our elites. So there's a hell of a lot still to come from them, I'm certain. But the fact that you beat out Telluride Bush as well, for both teams, that is an interesting story because obviously for Telluride, that's okay. We're now getting beat by the team that weren't even part of the conversation last week. For Huntsman, it's another check mark on that path.
Well, speaking of scary teams, I think we got to talk about our winners of Cup number 2 for North America. It is none other than Brooklyn. All right, they come out swinging. They make a pretty great tweet. Let's actually go to this box. We're doing this live, folks. It's A-OK. I think this is a much better way to showcase this. But you can say, they said, we won't celebrate this like it's the Super Bowl. GG's to all the ponies, bushes, huntsmen, and the like. A friendly reminder of who runs the slums down here. What a tweet. Jeez. And the fact that you're showing Mr. Tyler Fellow and Brack there, I think two people who, to use your own words, do run the slums a little bit, I think is fun to show. But the actual storyline here, Enigma, I mentioned it in the intro. It's a new German superstar on the rise. Let's just take a look at some of the stats from Aluka in that Cup 2. Absolutely insane stats all across the board.
Okay, so touching on a couple of things. First of all, I'll be stunned if that tweet isn't from Rafi, because Guy comes out swinging every now and again, and he knew what he was doing there. Fellow and Brack, good to see them kind of stepping atop things again. Whether or not they get back into the league anytime soon, I don't know, because of the opportunities that they've had in the past. But Aluka, the conversation here, and it's a weird one because the other player in this roster, Nate, was the one that everyone was looking at to be that breakout superstar for the team. And is he very good? Of course he is, clearly. But it is a situation where this young man, Aluka West, has come out of nowhere and is frying, putting the entire scene on skates, has everyone just stunned right now. But it's not just the numbers, right? We can talk about them all we want. I think he goes like double positive in grand finals. Insane performance in every single metric. It's this. If you haven't watched this 5-minute clip, I promise it is worth every single second of watching it, because I kind of it was my birthday Sunday, hence I've got a beer in hand, 32. Don't hold it against me. But it's a case of I tuned in, and obviously everyone's going nuts about Aluka, and I'm kind of well, I've heard his name a little bit, but nothing to this degree. Open up and watching this footage, I'm thinking, all right, surely this kid's cheating, right? There's got to be something. We've all been there. We had Jimbo. We had all these situations.
Sure.
Honestly, just watching the footage, I'm thinking, is this one of the pros subbing in to kind of have some fun? The way in which he's playing is truly outrageous. It's the ability not only to read the situation, because there's a lot of kills out there on the map, as you see in the tweet, but he's fighting for the rotations, playing in for the spawns. This moment right here, just keeping his life, staying in the back line, being a pain in the ass all the time. Intelligence that defies his years and has everybody very rightfully talking about him.
Well, that's also kind of, it reminds me a little bit of why somebody like Merc was such a valuable addition to a lot of those teams last year, right? Merc can shoot like no other, but it's that the kills were so impactful. And that's a lot of what I get with the same thing with Aluka. You're dropping 133 kills in 4 maps. Sure, we've all seen the stat padding maps there. Don't worry. We've all seen those series. But it's the fact that of those 133 kills, it's exactly what you mentioned. They were impactful kills in order to help open up the map, help your team, go to victory. That's there. Absolutely wild stuff. Definitely somebody to look out for that we will be keeping our eyes on, especially as we get ready to head into the break. And then obviously, into that next cup. And as we look towards, of course, the Elite in January, which kicks off very, very soon. So North America definitely gave us some stuff to talk about, some new players to look at, and maybe some storylines that we got to keep our eyes on. North America wasn't the only one having some fun over the weekend, though. EMEA also had their Cup number 2 with fun little storylines. Number 1 to me, Enigma Alula, coming out of nowhere, it seems like, making a pretty solid run in this bracket, taking down some pretty solid teams, right? We see them, they obviously go down here on the winner side to Project 7, but on that lower bracket, I mean, they drop on down and they actually go up against the Frenchies, aka now known as Clutch Rain, and they do get taken on out. But this Alula club is really fun to watch, right? And I think that this kind of is just showcasing why challengers are sometimes so fun, especially in a region like EMEA, is that you get these teams who seemingly can kind of come out of nowhere and sort of make a name for themselves, right? So we obviously know Alula Club is a one of those Saudi Arabian esports wars that's looking to get more and more invested into the scene. So I love that they're here and already that they're seeing some early success from one of their teams.
Yeah, and let's preface with, we know it is controversial out there that Europe and the Middle East end up being put together. We know that there's a lot of players unhappy about that, but look, it's what it is. You kind of put into the situation, play for it, fight for it, scrape for every single second and inch that you can on the map. because it doesn't matter. It will not matter what region anyone is from. All that matters are the results. And Alula managing to get 4th here is impressive stuff, regardless of anything else. So this is Op, Nox, Little Boy, and Fly, I think is the name. I don't really know these players at all, which is stunning, really, considering they end up finishing, what, top 4, was it? So, yeah, this is just a breakout moment, potentially. Like, this is a team, again, that now we start to turn our attention towards. Obviously, you and me know Alula. We've cast over them in Warzone. We know the club. But the roster itself, this is one of those kind of moments where it's like, okay, well, can the Saudi players, the Middle Eastern players then, can they really mix it with the Europeans? Obviously, this becomes maybe more of a conversation because of the controversy in the ping and whatever. How do you look on LAN? But right now, the only thing they can do is knock down the domino set up in front of them. And top 4 would put you into an elite later on into the season. So that's a great showing early to prove exactly why you are here, that you belong, and that the chances should have been here all along.
I think a cool thing, though, that we got to focus about with EMEA, though, is 2 different teams, and they are the teams that made it to the grand finals, right? We now have them. They are now called Clutch Rain, aka they were the Frenchies from Cup 1, our good French brothers, and also Rock Esports, a team that we had also talked about in last week, right? And I think it makes sense to talk about these two because in round 1, we see Rock and Clutch Rain go up against each other. It goes all the way to a map 5 with Rock taking the win. And then after that, Rock is full on sprinting towards a grand final appearance. Feels good, right? Let's talk about the lower bracket, though, where Clutch Rain, well, they basically do the same, but on the lower side of the bracket, all the way up to losers finals, where they go up against Project 7. That goes to around, 5. But in grand finals, dude, we go all the way to a map 7 between these 2 teams, right? And I think the one thing that's really cool, when we kind of talk about it here, is that on one side, we're seeing some consistency, right, with Clutch Rain, and obviously, our French squadron that's here. This is their 2nd grand final appearance that they're able to do. And then with Rock, right, we talked about them last week, and that maybe they had some early mistakes. They kind of drop out maybe a little bit earlier than we were expecting. Well, they're able to, I think, maybe get a little bit more practice underneath their belt, figure out how to play the game a little bit. We're starting to see strategies really start to come out, and they are able to make it all the way to a grand final. And I think that just goes to showcase to me is that we're already seeing talent start to develop here in the EMEA region and challengers, and teams are just continuing to get better.
Well, the thing is, it wasn't even just a game 7. It was round 11. It came down to the final do or die moment. I think it's Cobra who ends up getting, unfortunately, caught out in the first blood. And from there, Rock just kind of backed off and played that numbers advantage. So it was, as tight as you could get it, really splitting hairs. And Clutch Rain / the Frenchies. I mean, the fact that they get here and then basically lose in that fashion, they're still right up there. Like, this is a dangerous squad, and I think will be for the entirety of the year. Yeah. The fact that they go on that run for lower bracket as well gives me, I think sometimes top teams, when it's all going swimmingly, they run really well, really nice and hot. When they fall into lower brackets, sometimes we see them get bounced out pretty quickly, and a couple they can slip on banana peels, shall we say. Whereas Clutch Rain show that they've got the stamina and punch their way all the way through. Again, we know there's plenty of controversy on the timeline right now about everything that's going on, but Clutch Rain, you've just got to play the game. And the fact that you lose in this fashion, I don't think that this is a big problem. This is one of those rosters that everyone's going to have their eye on. So much talent and the potential really to already, this feels like, not only do very well in the elites, but do very well in the lands. The fact that you're doing well consistently.
Yeah, and I think that's really what the storyline, right, that we're going to follow over the next coming weeks, right? We're about to go on a break. Okay, sure, we're getting ready for the Elite, like we mentioned in January. We have, of course, some of those EU majors, kind of, they're a little bit away, but really, realistically, you look at the schedule, not that far away, right? And so when we kind of look at these teams, it's like, can they perform online? And then how does that transfer, of course, on to LAN? Because right now, when it comes to, of course, that Birmingham and Paris major, I mean, hey, Clutch Rain is a team that I'm going to be really keeping my eyes on. But to your point, do we see any of these Saudi teams also make it out to these majors and play in these opens and showcase that, like, hey, yeah, we understand there's this whole conversation going on around ping, but we're also able to still perform. We're able to still compete when it comes time for LAN and when everybody's on the same ping. I know, like, for me, every single week, I think that's what I'm going to kind of be thinking about is, like, that's what makes me the most excited. Like I said, is like these EMEA teams that have not one, but 2 different open chances that they can go ahead, that they can play on LAN, and they can really make some names for themselves.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a weird one as well. I mean, it's Clutch Rain are, I think, an org that are going to fund this team to the North American Opens as well. I'd be very surprised if they didn't. So this should be a team that we see a lot of this year. I'd be very surprised if Cobra Brazilians in particular have agreed to sign a deal with an org that doesn't fund them, to be quite honest with you. But they're talented enough to be demanding that at this point. But either way, yeah, a lot of opportunities this year to prove who you are. I guess for Rock, this is a case for me of, I mean, we should recognize Doom and Kicks. We've seen these around quite a bit. They've done solid things in challenges over the last few years, and then obviously had little stints. So, I mean, it's a case of, all right, we've managed to win this. This is impressive enough. The thing is, for me, it turns out there's a second Doom, by the way. Who the hell is this guy? I have no idea. And then Rolled? I have no idea. No idea who this young man is, and yet you've come out and won a cup. So maybe I'm just uneducated these days and need catching up, but this young man, part of a winning team, if this is a bit of an announcement moment, then what a surefire way to do it. And again, I think kind of this pipeline that the Saudi Arabians, and we know, you and me know, we've been out there. Yeah. Saudi Arabians love Call of Duty. Let's not get this twisted. They fucking love Call of Duty. There is nothing quite like it for them. It is the esport that they fantasize over. The players that, you know, our scumps, our classes, etc. They are their heroes too, and they come out in swaves whenever we were over there. So this is one of those moments where they've clearly developed this talent pool, and they've got their own E-League and everything else over there. They've got a huge setup. That pipeline clearly exists because we have two teams inside the top 4 and a bunch of new names to add to the list of potential challenger talent that are starting to eye their way up towards the league.
And it wouldn't be Call of Duty without a little bit of roster mania. Challengers Intel put out this tweet that we both kind of agree with, right? They say, if I had to guess, I'd expect a lot of roster changes and expect them fast. After Cup number 3 this week, we've got Christmas and then New Year. So not a lot of practice will be done, and then straight into the Elite Quals on January 3rd, which are the most important things so far. Challengers Intel then goes on to say, teams will want to do their change now, so they've at least got some sort of practice going into the Elite Qualifier. Making or missing out on the Stage 1 Elite can absolutely save or kill a team's year. And then we were talking about this, and you said you had some ideas that were echoing similar sentiments.
100%. At Challengers Intel, I think Josh hits this straight on the head. This is arguably, I'd say, other than maybe pre-champs or just before any sort of like switches that potentially go into like opens when you end up with players falling out of the league, I think that this is the most important roster mania of the year, because you've got this gap now, and teams can kind of really go either one of two ways. Either you've got yourself a very busy Christmas period, which have a great time, get festive, do all the things, but you might slide down the pecking order. On the other hand, there might be a couple of players that are like, you know what, this is what I'm going to push really hard this year, and I'm going to put a lot of more time in and get a lot better during this period. But this is one of those moments where if you go into the elites, if you don't qualify for that first elite, your stock falls dramatically. It all becomes, the conversation entirely shifts away from the cups and to the elites. If you're not in the elites, very few people in the league are going to give a damn about you, quite frankly. So this is an incredibly important moment for all of those players for getting not only into the elite, but then it's your seeding for the rest of the year as well, whether that be cups or elites. So it kind of like everything that happens right now compounds itself through the rest of the year. Do we see a couple of teams manage to change their story partway through the season? Absolutely. But do you know how hard it is to break through that ceiling when it has been established? Very, very fucking difficult. So yeah, these teams right now have got like a huge window in front of them. I'm hoping that some of them figure out how to take full advantage of it, because by God, some squads need to.
I mean, and we even see like a little bit of the trickle-down effect too, right? Like we're already hearing some rumors of some teams in the CDL are looking to make changes. So when we're talking about that, like, people I know are looking at that Telluride Bush roster of all 4 players who have been in the league, right? Like, do any of them get called up? Somebody like a TJ, right? Like, does TJ get called up for the 9th time? It feels like in the CDL era, that's going on, right? Like it's so, and then that causes a snowball effect, right? A domino effect that we kind of talk about. Yes. So it's like, those changes can impact what goes on in Challengers. Even just roster mania within Challengers itself can impact itself there. So it's just going to be really interesting to see what type of changes do we see over this break, because maybe we see some of these teams come into Cup 3, like we said, who have been consistently performing good. And maybe after Cup 3, they say, hey, this is the roster. I think this is the roster that we can ride it out with the rest of the year. We're feeling good already. We can, it's a very apparent path forward of what we need to improve on. Great. You might have other rosters who play that Cup 3 and go, we suck. This is not working. And if there's a time, we better do it before the elite. We got to do it. But there's always that question, Enigma. is that it's not always just about what roster that works. It's also about those elusive pro points that are also coming into the mix as well, right? So that's like this other extra added layer that's to this entire roster mania. I'm looking forward to it, dude. That's kind of the fun part of us, is that we get to just kind of sit back and enjoy it, right? We don't gotta worry too much about it.
No, certainly not. I mean, there'll be a lot of players right now stressing because their seats will not feel very warm in some cases. Others are starting to, you know, right now, that conversation that we've had about Aluka through this episode, no doubt, if you're the teammates in that roster, you're looking across and going, are we about to lose our boy here going into the most important part of the season? Then we've got to kind of keep an eye on who we want as our replacement. There's an entire like whirlwind that happens every time there's a change that goes through in the challengers scene. Everyone will feel it, and the CDL included, I think, during this period. It might be early, but there will already be a few teams, certain Vancouver Surge, that desperately need to make some sort of change to the situation that's going on, because otherwise your season's basically over before it starts. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that's going to happen right here, right now. And this is one of those moments where every single year, you and me will do this at the end of this year, guarantee you. We will look back at this window and we will say that move decided that player's season, or that lack of move did nothing for that player's year. That's what's going to happen. I guarantee it.
So with all that being said, we got Cup number 3 coming up this weekend before a nice little break. So make sure that you're tuning on in. Make sure you're subscribed and all that fun jazz, because you know for certain we're going to have some thoughts after this 3rd Cup. We might have a little bit of a sprinkling of maybe some power rankings coming out, some other stuff. I don't know. With Challengers not happening and we run a show called This Week in Challengers, we got to come up with some fun stuff, and we have some stuff cooking. So definitely you want to be on there. I'm Dandro. That's Enigma. We'll see you next week.